Can't touch otherwise.
Just keep it back in the... Nope. Good evening. Welcome to the October 14th regular session of City Council. At this moment, we will like to invite Mr. Shinoko for a prayer.
I'm probably the newest resident of Xenia. It's great to be here. I've been in town about a year and a half, but we moved into our home in Right Cycle Estates a month ago.
Yeah.
So it's good to be here with you.
Bill, you're registered to vote. That's the most important thing.
You know what? Well, it's so like you. Yes, my voter registration card arrived today just for you. Okay, so we'll be there. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the blessings of this day in our lives, in the city of Xenia, in our county, in our state, and in our nation, and within the globe of your wondrous creation. May those who hold power understand that it is a trust from you to be used, not for personal gain or profit, but for the service of the people. Drive us from cynicism, selfishness, and corruption. Grant in your mercy just and honest government, and give us your good grace to live together hospitably in unity and peace. You call your people to honor those in authority. Help us to elect trustworthy leaders, participate in wise decision-making for our common life together, and serve our neighbors in local communities. Bless our leaders of this city, that we may be at peace among ourselves and a blessing to other cities and towns as well. We thank you for your continued blessings on this city, and help us make it a place of safety for all people, both rich and poor together. Make us good stewards of all the resources you provide to us, especially your natural resources. Give us your grace to extend your hospitality where neighborhoods remain vibrant and whole, whether the lost and forgotten, the addicted and disordered are supported, and where the arts flourish. Make the diverse fabric of the city a delight to all who live and visit, and a strong bond uniting people around common goals for the good of all. Encourage, protect, and share with us your loving hospitality, that we may in turn reform this community in which we live, work, serve, and play in peace and thanksgiving. Through Jesus Christ crucified and raised, that we may live with you. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll now call the meeting to order. Mr. Duke, roll call, please.
Vice President Dean.
Here.
Councilman Scrivens.
Here.
Councilwoman Dean.
Here.
Councilman Branham.
Here.
Councilman Urschel.
Here.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
President Smith.
Mr. Vice President, I'd like to make a motion to excuse President Smith as he had a family obligation.
Motion made by the mayor,
I'll second that.
seconded by Cody. Roll call.
Vice President Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Branham.
Aye.
Councilman Urschel.
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, I'll now ask for approval of minutes for the September 23rd, 2021 meeting.
Motion.
Motion made by Councilman Scrivens,
A second.
Partial got it.
sure, seconded by Councilman Urschel. Roll call, or any discussion, I guess I should say. No discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Branham.
Abstain.
Councilman Urschel.
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
Vice President Dean.
Aye.
Motion carried.
It is now time for special presentations. We have the Greene County Commissioners and a few other people here to give us a presentation on the proposed jail levy.
Mayor, council, I'm here with Major Kirk here. Keller, excuse me. He could be Captain Kirk, right?
That's right.
That's right, at one time. I was listening to the prayer, and I kept waiting because it sounded to me like he was saying, vote for the jail levy. That's what I got out of that. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Thank you very much for having for giving us the opportunity to talk about the jail levy. This is one of the most important things that has come across in Greene County for many years. If there's a weak link in our system with our facilities, it's our jail system. And it's a shame that we've allowed to go this far, and I won't go and tell you why it's all happened. I've been in office for over 8 years. And I remember taking a tour after I got elected in 2012. And I'm going to tell you something right now, you couldn't pay me to do another tour. You couldn't pay me to go through that again. We need a new jail. And I think what we have here, a program to how we're going to pay for the jail and then to show the voters and the consumers that this is a necessary thing we have to do. It's going to be a sales tax, 25.25%. Right now, our sales tax percentage is 6.75. We're going to go to 7%. All the other surrounding communities right now are 7% or more. So we're just coming up even with them. Now, I want you to think about this number. For every $100 of purchases, taxable purchases that you make, it's going to cost you $0.25. $0.25. I mean, if you don't smoke, that's probably in your ashtray. So it's something that we really have to think about of passing this to solve our problem that we have in our community. In addition, 40% of the sales tax revenue comes from people who do not live in Greene County. We're going to be using other people's money that come from Warren County, Montgomery County, Clark County, and they shop in our stores, and they use our restaurants, and they pay that sales tax. So think about that, other people's money. And I think that's very, very important, those two things. The other thing is that when this levy did not pass the first time, we were looking at a jail of 500 beds. We heard the people say it's too big, too much. It's too much planning for the future. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen in our society that is going to change how we incarcerate people. Let's not overbuild at this point in time. We can always add on. We heard that message. So we went from 500 beds down to 384 beds. In 2019, that 384 beds said it was going to be about $50 million. Now, of course, that's an estimate, and they always, CYA when they come to the estimates. But having said that, we all know what's happened with inflation and what's going on. So we don't know what that number really is, and that's one of the reasons that we put this levy on for 16 years. I believe in my heart that when we get done, we're going to be paying that thing off in 12 years. Here's the other beauty of this. We've put it in the language that once this levy is paid off, once these bonds are paid off, once these bonds are paid off, the levy will automatically, or the tax rate will automatically go back to 6.75. 100% of that money will either be used for construction or for equipment that's going to go into that new jail. This is something that we can't say no to. Our community needs it, and we need each one of you to be disciples of this process. Those of you running for election, you know how you win an election. One vote at a time. We need your support, and we need for you to talk to other people. I have some papers up here, some jail project fact sheets that people in the audience would like to pick up. You have one in front of you. In about 2 minutes, we're going to have a test on it. So, no, I'm kidding. So anyway, I think it's important that we really support this new jail. I'd like to have Major Kirk maybe say a few words also. Fellow, excuse me. I don't know how to do that.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Kruger. For those of you that don't know who I am, the reason I'm here is because I am the Director of Hospitality and Hotel Management for Gene Fisher's Gated Communities, the jail administrator. And you heard Mr. Kugler say that he doesn't want to take a tour again. The unfortunate truth is I have 101 employees that work 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in that facility. And I just want to share very briefly 3 reasons why we have to do this. Number one, the needs assessment that the commissioners had come, 2018 report, the Greene County Jail needs to be abandoned. I mean, it's very clear. Once you see the infrastructure and the linear construction. It's an outdated facility that doesn't meet the minimum jail standards in the state of Ohio for housing needs. Secondly, your representatives on the grand jury that takes the tour of the jail each time a grand jury is seated, their reports consistently come back and say, you need a new jail. We need this for a lot of reasons, not just the safety of our staff and the inmates, but for programming, to have the space for classroom programming to meet what we all know are mental health needs, that unfortunately there's no more state help for those with mental health needs. Where do they go? They come to jail. That's not helping them. So we need to build this conduit that will allow professional services to plug in and help those people and have the bedding that's appropriate, housing that's appropriate for those folks. So again, I'm asking that you not just vote yes for this, for our citizens, for the men and women behind the walls and that serve there, but for the sheriff's office. Sheriff operates out of a 1929 car dealership, and it's not a hardened facility. It's not secure. And where you look around Beaver Creek, Fairborn, even Cedarville, and they have police departments that serve the needs of the community, the chief law enforcement officer of the county has a hallway in a 1929 building. It's just not appropriate for the citizens. So I'm asking you not only to vote yes on issue 1, but please, your constituents, your friends, your family, let's get out to vote November 2nd. I'm going to yield just the last minute of my time to our prosecutor, David Hayes, who is a strong voice for the safety of the citizens.
Yes. I do also want to introduce Scott Auger from from the Sheriff's Department, David Hayes, Dick Gould, our other county commissioners here in support of this also. So gentlemen, thank you. Thank you.
I will be very brief. If you don't know who I am, my name is David Hayes. I am the Greene County Prosecuting Attorney. As all of you know, it is a time in this country that we are having a robust debate about the criminal justice system and the things that perhaps need to be changed about the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, it is a circumstance that we cannot deny in our society that jail is a necessity. Some people simply need to be locked up. And the facilities that we have in place in Greene County right now are inadequate to the task, as Major Keller just mentioned to you. So I simply wanted to let all of you know that I support this 100%. My office supports this 100%, and I respectfully ask all of you to lend your support to it if your conscience will permit it. And I would just respectfully ask if you could listen to Chief Deputy Anger for just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Scott Anger. Obviously, I worked for the city of Xenia for 30 years, so I'll start out and tell you just some of the things that have happened when I was an officer, a sergeant, a captain with the jail. There's lots of frustration that has been over the years with manpower and everything else with the jail, because literally in 1989, there was a consent decree by a federal judge that made overcrowding. That building was built in 1969. It's 52 years old, and I think they used stuff from the 50s when they built it in 69. It really is, it's not adequate. We only have 31 beds for maximum security people in our county. Our vision is something more like the new building that has been coming up at Fairfield County and also at Warren County. We have a vision to where we have a system inside the jail where we have our administrative offices, everything in one building. That will cut down on transports. That'll help us better with our safety issues. And talking about the beds, the vision of the sheriff and the commission is to build a facility that's going to be good for 50 years, something that we know that we can use for 50 years, and it's going to serve our purposes. I've served on the Mental Health and Recovery Board for the last 11 years. I go to the meetings regularly, and I know we talk about homeless problems, and I know there's a big homeless problem here, but the sheriff's department and the jails, we have to take care of crisis. And I can tell you we're taking care of more crisis than ever before. And unfortunately for some, the first place they go when there's a crisis for their own safety and the safety of others is our jails. And if we don't have a good facility to bring those people in and be the conduit for where they need to go back out. So with the Mental Health and Recovery Board, I know they're excited about this project. about having some programming that's put inside the jail so we can have recovery services. We can have some conduit for the 25 or less days that they're there sometimes on average, so we can actually get them plugged back into the community and not have so many people out on the street, maybe reduce that some. So anyway, I just want to say one more time, it is not a property tax. It's a quarter of $100. It doesn't hit groceries, it doesn't hit prescriptions, it doesn't hit fuel, and this is critical infrastructure. You hear a lot about infrastructure these days, but this is as critical as it gets. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now open it up for audience comments. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to old business. Resolution 2021-LL, providing for assessments to be levied and authorizing the finance director to certify those assessments to the Greene County auditor, is introduced by Councilman Urschel.
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and bring this resolution forward.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I'll take a motion on that, yeah. Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dean. Any comments?
Just, once again, these are levies for actions that we've had to do coming out of the code enforcement folks here, and this is just a means for us to recover those costs. So it's unfortunate that we had to do the code enforcement actions in the first place, but once again, we need to recover our costs from the folks that should have been doing the activities on the properties in the first place. So.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
Vice President Dean?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, seeing as we have no public hearings, we'll now move on to new business. Resolution 2021-MM, authorizing the submittal of applications for federal funding through MVRPC for the Bellbrook Avenue from Allison Avenue to West 2nd Street resurfacing project, and the East Market Street from North Detroit Street to North Columbus Street resurfacing project, and declaring an emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The city was recently notified by MVRPC that they are soliciting applications for funding requests through its Transportation Improvement Program. Additional federal funding has been made available recently through legislative initiatives like the American Rescue Plan Act, and this has provided additional funding that's now trickling down through entities such as MVRPC, so this is a good opportunity. For this new round of applications, the Engineering Division, as indicated, is recommending we apply for funding to resurface Bellbrook Avenue from Allison Avenue to West 2nd Street and East Market Street from North Detroit Street to North Columbus Street. If awarded the funding for Bellbrook Avenue, the proposed project, along with the OPWC project on the westernmost section of Bellbrook Avenue, undertaken earlier this year, would allow us to complete that entire length of Bellbrook and have that entire length rehabbed here recently. So we're excited to be able to finish that out. The East Market Street between North Detroit and Columbus sees substantive daily vehicular and pedestrian traffic. If awarded the funding, the project would address the poor condition of the roadway and fix a much-needed drainage issue, particularly there in front of the library, if you're familiar with that area. Separately, we would pursue sidewalk and curb enhancements, restoration of that infrastructure. We would do that with our annual sidewalk monies, so that would be separate, but our intent would be to pursue that as well. The combination of these efforts would really immediately benefit patrons of the library, customers of county offices, county court, Xenia Municipal Court, our Justice Center, a lot of institutional users in that immediate vicinity, and we think this would bring a lot of immediate benefit to folks utilizing those services. We want to reinforce that federal funding through MVRPC can only be used for qualifying roadways, which means typically marked routes or routes that are identified as thoroughfares. So these types of monies cannot be used for neighborhood level streets, which is why, again, we look at these larger traffic users, thoroughfares. If awarded, the monies would be available in 2023, so it's a couple years out. The estimated total project cost to resurface the portion of Bellbrook, as indicated, is $366,547. Staff will submit grant funding in the request of $196,848 to MVRPC, making the balance of the total which is $169,698. we would utilize, 228 fund dollars for the local match of that. On the East Market Street, the estimated project total is $636,638. Again, the request from MVRPC is $406,741 with a local match of $229,897. And again, we would recommend general capital fund dollars for the local match for this. The reason these numbers are what they are, there are some limitations with this program. This is it's a new set of monies under an existing program, and there are some limitations in terms of how much we can ask for. The more we provide in a local match, the more competitive we are in the grant. I think it's worth acknowledging this evening as well. As recently as this afternoon, we've had conversation with MVRPC about the Market Street potential project here. And again, we've not submitted an application formally that we would require council's blessing this evening to do so, but we've been communicating about the viability of these projects, and we were a little unsure about that Market Street project, but again, having additional dialogue this afternoon, we feel like this would be a very competitive project. So this evening, we are requesting that council authorize as an emergency resolution 2021 MM that would allow us to submit the application. We're requesting the emergency as there is a very tight timeline on these. It does require a resolution of support from council, and given our two reading in our charter for resolutions, the timing just isn't right to go through the normal procedures. So we would request that council submit this or approve this as an emergency this evening so that we can get this submittal completed by the deadline.
Okay. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll do it.
Motion made by Councilwoman Dean,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilman Urschel. Any discussion?
I do have one question. So the write-up, I'm assuming that Chris just wrote this up as a target. So I feel like industrial on down to 2nd Street or pretty close to it is needing repaving or hasn't been touched. Did you just use Allison as a main street in your write-up, but it's going to basically be that whole stretch from industrial on down? Sorry, I hate to be a pain.
No, it's a good question for clarification. As city manager reported, so we've been, as you guys know, we've been between OPWC and MVRPC, we've been knocking Bellbrook out.
Yeah.
We got another section of Bellbrook where you're talking about, we've already been funded for. We applied for that last year.
Right.
Okay.
So that was a 2020 application. So then we pick up from there with, if we get funded from here, to finish it off to 2nd Street.
So it's not all been done, but with award of those subsequent rounds, we'll be able to finish that out.
Yeah.
I guess I was not real clear about that.
I don't know why I thought the 2020 was from basically Colorado on out west to the township line.
That was OPWC for this year.
Okay.
That's when we applied for in July.
I apologize.
No problem.
Can't keep it straight.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. City Manager, is this a curb-to-curb repair, or is this just the drive lanes?
This would repair the entire width of the roadway. Again, concrete work we'd be taking on separately. That's not part and parcel to this particular grant application, which is why I really wanted to note in particular there on Market Street, there's a lot of bad sidewalk and some pretty shoddy curb, and we feel it's pretty important given the nature of the institutional users around. A lot of folks walking to the library and to these. So I just wanted to note separately, the concrete work's not part of this. It'll be the asphalt curb to curb, but our intent, particularly with that Market Street project, would be to finish the project out. In fact, we'd probably, if we're awarded, we'd probably move forward with the concrete work earlier, as soon as next year, and rehab that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Brown?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
Vice President Dean?
Aye.
Motion carried.
We'll now move on to Resolution 2021-NN as an emergency, authorizing the purchase of 2 one-ton pickup trucks from Key Chrysler at a not-to-exceed purchase price of $69,650 and declaring an emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. In April of this year, council authorized the purchase of 2 2021 one-ton pickup trucks for our water service operations, and this would be a purchase from Key Chrysler. And the cost of those trucks as quoted at the time was $29,961 apiece. The resulting total purchase price as quoted to us was $59,922. Unfortunately, we've recently heard back from Key Chrysler that the 2021 Dodge Ram 3500 trucks are still unavailable, and they do not believe they will be able to obtain this model year pickups as they had originally committed to. This is clearly a sort of a localized impact of the nationwide supply chain issues that we are seeing. And, it is definitely hitting us here locally and having a national effect. With this, however, comes the reality that with that material and supply shortage, production costs are increasing rapidly. If you've seen recent reports this week, your average new car purchase price went from about $22,000 last year. It's about $28,000 now. Well, the same thing has happened here. Key Chrysler's indicated that they believe they can commit and will be able to secure 2022 models of this particular truck, but they estimate that there will be an additional cost of $9,728 per unit. Now, that's a pretty significant increase. But again, as indicated to council when you approved this initially, we do feel that these fleet replacements do need to move forward, and now we're going to have to take our existing fleet and make them last another year. So what we are requesting is that council would increase the not-to-exceed purchase price from the $59,922 up to $69,650. I want to note with this that in a measure of good faith, and Key Chrysler has been an excellent partner to our city and to our community, and as a demonstration of that, they have essentially offered to eat the increased cost for one of these vehicles and are asking us to eat the increased cost for the other. So that's really a pretty good deal, all things considered. They are not able to give us an exact date when we would be able to take possession of those 2022 models, but they do, again, feel pretty confident that they'll be able to secure them at some point next year. So again, this evening, what we're requesting is council approve as an emergency the resolution. The purpose of the emergency is so that we can keep our place in line and help ensure that we would get these units as quickly as will be reasonably possible. So again, resolution 2021 NN, we're requesting as an emergency this evening to help facilitate this.
Thank you. Anyone would like to propose this? I'll make that motion, seconded by the mayor.
Sure.
I would just add, Mr. Vice President, and just as a heads up to council, we also were notified this week, council had approved purchase, as we normally do, of fleet replacements for our cruisers. And we've basically been told by the Ford dealer that those Ford Explorer pursuit-rated vehicles are not going to be available this year. So we are really scrambling at this point to figure out what Plan B will be. I think we're a little better positioned in the police division because of the way we rotate fleet in. New fleet goes to our captains first, and then we outfit them the following year for use on the streets. So we're going to have fleet we can insert, and I think we're looking at a different approach to those captains' vehicles. So that system has sort of worked as this one-off. But again, we're seeing this dynamic along several fronts. I think you'll recall earlier this year when you authorized purchase of some of our heavier duty units for both fire division and public service, we're talking like an 18-month lead time to take possession of some of these things. We have every reason to believe that things like medics and engines and heavy duty trucks and public service will take every bit of that and maybe longer. So I do not see a change in this dynamic in the near future, unfortunately.
Thank you. Any comments?
Just want to thank you, Chrysler, and their commitment to helping us out. They're just such a great community partner.
Mr. Duke, roll call, please.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Brand?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Mayor Mayes?
Aye.
Vice President Dean?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Now, Resolution 2021-00, authorizing the sale of the city-owned property at 677 East Cincinnati Avenue. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Staff has met with our property management committee previously on 2 occasions and in an executive session with council this evening. And tonight we are recommending introduction of this resolution, which, if approved, would authorize the sale of the site that we know as the former Houben and Allison Cordage Company. In 2011, the city purchased the former H&A property at 677 Cincinnati Avenue in a negotiated deal to allow for the remediation of environmental conditions at the site. Older residents in our community remember a series of significant fires there and a whole host of social ills at that site, in addition to the environmental concerns, and the council at the time felt it appropriate to get that cleaned up. The city subsequently obtained a Clean Ohio Revitalization Fund grant in the amount of $1.9 million, and Eventually, the site was remediated. The buildings on the site were demolished. And at the conclusion of that process in December of 2015, an environmental covenant on the property was secured and recorded, and that covenant does describe the limited use of the site for future purposes to some degree of commercial or industrial. So there can be no residential, no parks, no schools, things of that nature. Has to be commercial or industrial. The city has owned the property ever since. It's been on the market for the past 10 years with essentially no significant interest. Over the past couple of months, the city has entertained, however, 2 offers. For purchase of the site. Staff has been in specific discussions for a possible sale of property to Memory Puzzles LLC with the prospective owner's intent being to pursue a corrugated cardboard manufacturing operation. Not a ton of jobs, but a respectable number of jobs would be added to this new industry in our community. And we are excited by the prospect of having that site back in productive use by someone who wants to bring industry into our community. The purchase agreement as presented calls for a $50,000 at closing with an additional $10,000 per year over the next 5 years for a total purchase price of $100,000, and that would be a subsequent loan agreement at a 0% interest to secure that total payment. As part of the agreement, the city would also waive water and wastewater tap fees to allow those utilities to be extended to the property. And again, we really felt this was appropriate as water and sewer previously went to that site. So it's not that there's a new addition, it's just reconnecting those lines. Staff's kept the property management committee apprised of the negotiations throughout the process, incorporated their feedback into our negotiations. We feel that we've arrived at a final sales agreement that is beneficial to our community and provides a new opportunity for a new business in Xenia. I would at this point defer to committee members for introduction and any other comments that they would want to make as part of this project.
Introduced by Councilman Dean. Okay. Now moving on to Resolution 2021-PP, adopting a 5-year 2022 through 2026 capital improvement plan for the city of Xenia, Ohio. Mr. City Manager.
All right. As part of Council's last regular session, staff provided an overview presentation of the 2022 to 2026 Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP as we call it. As required by Section 9.12 of the city's charter, Council must formally adopt the capital plan annually by the end of October. And Resolution 2021 PP, as presented for introduction this evening, seeks to complete this process. As discussed with Council in the work session and the various committee meetings that we've had over the past couple months, this year's CIP development process has presented staff really with some unprecedented challenges. So just a unique set of conditions that we have been working through, both because of the unpredictability in the environment, but also because there have been some opportunities that have emerged very late in the year, both funding opportunities and partnership opportunities that have forced us to take a very creative approach in finalizing this 5-year CIP. But again, these are good problems to have and unique opportunities that have emerged. As always, we remind folks that as soon as the CIP is finished, it's out of date. This is an evolving process and these conditions continue to change. But this is our best guess at establishing a strategic plan, a blueprint for priorities for capital investments across the whole spectrum of capital programs that we have. We also remind our constituents that the 5-year CIP is only a plan. It is not committing to any particular project. It's not authorizing any funding. We will have to come back to Council through the appropriations process, whether that's our annual appropriations or subsequent supplemental appropriations, to authorize any specific project. The funding and approval, or I should say, of those specific projects, again, a lot of it will be incorporated into our budget for next year, and the first year of our 5-year CIP really does incorporate our capital budget for the next year. The CIP is published as a snapshot in time. It's updated throughout the year, again, leading to this final phase as required by charter here in the fall. Xenia, like all communities, faces a myriad of capital challenges. We have a lot of needs across a lot of functions, and we have very limited financial capacity to meet those needs, which means that coming up with a methodical, regimented, prioritized plan is not just a best practice, it's really essential for making sure that we're providing for these diverse needs in our community. For example, long-term needs to ensure compliance at the city's closed landfill. This remains very enigmatic for us. Solutions to fast-track surface transportation rehabilitation remain very limited when new revenue is not an option at this point. there are no easy or cheap fixes to fixing roads. And so we have to figure out how we prioritize the funding that we do have and what the long-term strategy will be. And even rapidly evolving opportunities. And we've discussed with council partnerships like the law enforcement agencies that we're discussing new appurtenances at our Ford Road training facility. And that's a project concept that's just emerged late this year. So again, a mixture of uncertainties with new opportunities with this particular 5-year CIP. The CIP presents a categorical review and discussion on the strategic direction for each of these areas, and all other categories of our capital investment are covered in the CIP. This includes our water treatment, wastewater treatment, our fleet replacement program, facilities, parks and trails, information technology, municipal court, public safety are among the key areas, but it's a whole host of program areas that are covered. So this evening we are asking for an introduction of Resolution 2021 PP. This would lead then to a public hearing and subsequent second reading at your next regular session and allow us to have that charter requirement checked off of approving this annual CIP program. And then we'll work toward implementation of that as we move forward. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Would anyone like to introduce?
I'll introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Urschel. Thank you. Now we have an administrative motion appointing Mary Haller to the vacant seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Councilman Branham.
Yeah. Currently, we have one vacancy on Planning and Zoning. It's been advertised on the city's social media site and website and the government channel. One individual expressed interest in filling the vacancy, and I recommend the appointment of Miss Mary Haller to fill the vacant term expiring on December 31st, 2022. And as a previous BZA member and more recently a past part-time city employee, a background check was not conducted. It is recommended that council appoint Ms. Mary Haller, who is in the crowd, and I'll ask her to come forward if she would like to speak, with the term expiration date of December 31st, 2022. Ms. Mary, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Just wanted to say thank you, and I'm glad to be able to come back and be involved again with city functions. I missed being here, and I'm just glad to be back, and thank you for accepting my
appointment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm assuming you would like to make the motion, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Motion made by Councilman Branham. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by the mayor. Any discussion?
Just glad to see Mary coming back and staying involved with the city. So we're glad to have her back.
Mr. Duke, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
Vice President Dean?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, we now move on to our second administrative motion, approving the schedule of bills in the amount of $494,998.89. Mr. Duke.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I have nothing specifically to reference on the bills this evening, but I'd be happy to answer any questions concerning the motion.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by the mayor,
I'll second that.
seconded by Mr. Branham. Any discussion? You're good? Okay. Roll call, Mr. Duke.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
Vice President Dean?
Aye.
Motion carried.
So I'm now moving on to appointed officials' reports. We'll start with the law director, Ms. Fisher.
I have nothing that you need, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Duke?
I have nothing added.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
I've got one question
Oh.
for Ryan, if I may.
Yeah.
Sure. One, there've been some discussion in some public forums that the city might be under some financial watch from the state and under some of the more recent evaluation criteria that the state has been looking at over the last 5 years or so, that might be some areas that we're in some financial stress. So I appreciate the fact you sent us some information to the council members on that. Just wondered if you could, just for the general public, give us an overview of that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the city is actually in fairly good stead financially. The state does have some criteria. They call them financial health indicators. They put together to evaluate different, I think there's about 20 different criteria that they evaluate, and they basically designated either as something that's in good condition, or it's cautious, or it's really problematic. The city only had one of those 20 that was identified as kind of a caution. It's a yellow, so they have a green, yellow, red type of a designation for each of those. That one was due to a decrease in income tax in 2020, which isn't surprising. I would say just about every municipality in the state probably had a decline in income tax in 2020 due to a lot of the employment issues related to COVID. And so that's not concerning. In fact, that report was probably our cleanest report that we've had from the state auditor. The city has a pretty healthy key operating fund balance. In fact, I know it's the largest key operating fund balance that we've had in the last 5 years or so, but it may be the largest that the city's ever had. We're exceeding our reserve requirement to some extent. Now, some of that is because we know that in the coming years, we're projecting a couple of deficits, and so it's as we see where income tax revenues go, we'll have to decide operationally what changes may be necessary. But generally, we're in pretty healthy condition. The state also has criteria for communities that are in fiscal distress. So you could be in a state of caution, emergency, and there's one other criteria in the middle. I can't remember exactly what that is. Watch. Yeah, so you're either caution, watch, or emergency. The city has never had any of those designations in its history. In fact, there are not a great number of municipalities who have been placed on that. But there's a listing of history on the state auditor's website. You can see anyone who's currently on watch and anyone who ever has been in that fiscal distress designation, and if they were in the past when they came out of it. So they've got a pretty good listing of anyone who may have fallen into those categories. But no, generally the city, while we certainly, like many other municipalities, have challenges in different funds in different areas, overall we're in a solid financial position, and we, I provide those 5-year projections on a monthly basis to council, showing that status, and generally, while there are some concerns, maybe in the 2025, 2026 area, in the immediate future, we're in good standing.
Great. And one other question. So the city, my understanding is we're going to be receiving ARP funds designated for municipalities in two installments. One we've already received for this year. In 2021, we're receiving a similar installment in 2022 as well.
Right.
And the total amount of those two installments would be?
Yeah, they're $1.4 million each, so a total of $2.8 million. And as you said, we've received the first $1.4 million. In the projections, currently, we have half of that covering operating costs, because we did have reduced revenue that typically would be used to pay for some of those operating activities. And then the other $1.4 million is slated for the capital improvement fund. Obviously, council at some point will have a discussion with council. Obviously, staff has been having these conversations, and we'll talk more specifically about how those dollars would be used. There's a 4-year period, so there's not an incredibly urgent need to figure out how exactly those dollars will be spent. But I would assume that here in the very near future, we'll be having more detailed conversations with council about how they would prefer to use those dollars.
Sure.
And I would just add, we've had, of course, conversations with the Budget and Finance Committee about those monies in particular, and I think the consensus of the committee was there's no rush to spend those monies this year. If you wanted to pursue, for example, a capital project this year, the lateness that we got the funds, and with our lateness of the understanding of how those funds could be used, it was really too late to pursue a lot of capital projects this year. So as the finance director's pointing out, the city has until 2024 to expend those funds. So taking your time to make a wise decision on what you want to pursue is certainly appropriate. $2.8 million is a lot of money, but I do think our public has to be realistic when we look at the cost of things, particularly in the inflationary environment that we're in today. $2.8 million is not going to fix our roads. It's not going to fix our storm sewer system. It's not going to repair all of our parks. We have a lot of needs, and that's a great seed money source, and it should be used wisely. But we're going to have needs well outside of what those funds can afford to fix.
There's one other question. So my understanding, we got some fairly specific direction, guidance in terms of how those dollars could be spent. We had 4 major areas or categories of funding or types of areas that we could expend those funds on. And I don't believe that we could directly go, when we talk about capital improvements, that we are authorized to directly expend those funds on roads and streets. Is that correct? Is that the correct understanding?
That is correct. There is so primarily there were 4 categories: revenue replacement, water, sewer, and broadband were those 4 primary categories. We did see a significant reduction in revenue.
Right.
And so I think that we can certainly make the case that and demonstrate there's very detailed criteria on what revenue would be included from a general revenue standpoint. We've done that calculation. We know what our lost revenue is, and we can show that we've lost the revenue that we are receiving through these ARPA funds.
Right. So we could make a motion for a portion of those to go towards revenue replacement from a first order effect and send that back to the
In fact, staff will recommend to council the passage of a resolution at some point in the coming months, much like we did with the CARES Act, where it is specifically determining what bucket that we're using, and I think it's safe to say staff will be recommending that revenue replacement line. And then once it's revenue replacement, you can use it for governmental expenditures.
Right.
And we would ask that council in that resolution also determine what those are. And then at that point, then you can figure out, okay, we're using those dollars to cover these costs, and how do we want to use the dollars that may remain outside of that.
Right.
So it may reduce, for example, the transfer that we have to make from the general fund into the police and fire funds to cover police and fire expenses.
Right.
And so you could figure out what do we want to do with those general fund dollars. So that's probably how it would be structured, and council will receive a request for passage of a resolution that determines all of that.
Right. But the principle, if we were going to authorize direct funding of capital funds, that would have to go to water, sewer, or broadband. We could not go directly into the
sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water, or broadband. The way it's classified, it's either sanitary or storm.
Correct. Got it. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. President, I had a question for the law director. We moved quickly past her. What's the status on the annexation? Still in, the ball's in their court?
As council's aware, the city cannot go in and annex a property owner's property. We can't go in and say you're going to annex to us. We're only allowed to do that if it's property that we ourselves own. So any property owner that wants to annex to the city, they have to actually file a petition with the county, and we haven't seen any.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. Merriman.
Thank you. I do have a number of updates this evening that I want to provide. First, I think probably mostly for the benefit of our viewing audience, as I've already had some discussion with council, I did want to announce that we have, as staff, really heeded the calls of council to take a very serious, methodical approach in dealing with some of the adverse effects of homelessness in our community. And to that order, we have launched what we're calling our Heads Up initiative, our Homelessness Engagement Assistance and Deterrence Solutions program. What we're essentially doing, we've put together a contact team that is going out, and we've launched this initiative about 3 weeks ago, so we're well into the process of not just vetting this, but implementing this program. And we have staff from the police division as well as staff from our public service department that are going out 5 days a week, early morning. We're going to all known locations, reported locations where we've had illegal squatting or we've had other homelessness-related issues. And we're in the process of engaging individuals that we meet on a one-on-one basis. And our first assignment in that engagement is to try to provide resources and opportunities for help for these individuals who are in need. What we know to be true is that most homeless people suffer from some type of substance abuse or mental health conditions, and often both. And so the types of concerns they have really present a diversity of issues. There's no easy solution. So our first order of business is to try to provide an opportunity for direct assistance, whether that's through Bridges of Hope or other services. Beyond that, what we remind these folks is that the city does have zero tolerance in terms of substance abuse, criminal activity to support that abuse. If you are illegally squatting on property, be it public or private, that you are not authorized to do so. Littering, loitering, any of these conditions, and certainly when these issues might be observed within proper protocol, we would cite individuals. If they have possessions on site, we will let them know that those need to be removed. If there's no one on site, we have developed a protocol in conjunction with the law director to post for those items to be removed within a certain period of time, or the city will go in and remove it and clear it out. And so then we coordinate that process through our public service department. We're in the process of lining up Bridges of Hope staff to accompany this team as they go out and engage folks. We're also in discussions with bringing TCN on board to be able to help to assess from a clinical standpoint whether or not individuals present certain characteristics that would require us to perhaps take a little more aggressive action. Over the past 3 weeks, our staff has been out every morning, and what I can report to you is that based on their findings, I think early conversations over the past maybe year is the sense that we have dozens and dozens of homeless people in our downtown, and that's just overriding everything. The reality is we've been able to identify about 12 folks who are consistently out, half of which are from the city of Xenia and half of which are not. So we've been in the process of actively engaging these folks. Some of these folks have, we think, moved on. We're not seeing them around. Others continue to linger, and we continue to try to provide opportunities for them. We've seen some transient folks who have come through, have been homeless, and we're seeking opportunities or means of helping get them back to home wherever home is, and discussing means that we might be able to do that. So we've been aggressive in dealing with this. We're trying to work with residential property owners and business property owners, particularly in and around the downtown, who have been subject to some of the problems associated with homeless folks at their properties, providing them a means of being able to contact this work team so that they can expedite addressing these issues. And we're seeing good progress. Anecdotally, as I've talked to members of council and others, you're seeing a lot less of the issue on the street. And I'm happy to report this because some of these individuals are actually taking us up on those offers of getting some hope. Help. Hope is a Freudian slip there, but that's the reality. They need some hope in their lives in order to activate the help that's available to them. We've not solved this problem. We'll never solve this problem. But this council's made it clear that this is a condition that is unacceptable. I think the disposition of this community as the city of hospitality is you want to help people. And I think the instruction from council was let's try to help folks. But I think added to that is if you are in our community to thieve and to steal, to support a habit, and you're unwilling to correct that behavior, you're unwilling to accept help, then you're welcome to move along. And so we're trying to balance that tightrope within the confines of what legally we can do. Because it's not illegal to be poor and it's not illegal to be homeless. But activities that are legal to support other addictive behaviors are certainly not tolerable in our community. There are some weak links that we need to work on. As we would cite individuals for illegal activities, it's a good bet that's not going to be adjudicated very rapidly or very effectively. The types of charges that we can usually advance, the court system, and as we talked about earlier this evening with the jail, they're simply too backlogged and too full. If we take someone into custody on a low-level charge related to a lot of these conditions and behaviors, they're not going to jail, and more than likely the prosecutorial process is not going to be advanced very far. That's just the reality of the situation that we're in today. That's not a reason not to cite them. It's not a reason not to move them through that adjudicative process to where it's practical. But again, we want to help meet their care needs first, hold them accountable where it's appropriate, and bring an improvement to this, and I think we're seeing that. So we'll continue to provide council with some updates as we advance that cause, but we're glad that this heads-up initiative is beginning to yield some fruit so far. Also, a brief update on our Xenia Town Square redevelopment conversation. I want to thank the mayor and Councilwoman Dean for participating in a couple weeks ago some of the vignette process that we had, bringing together a lot of community stakeholders to discuss the physical environment and what the look and feel of this new development opportunity might be. We have a draft plan that we're working through. The economic plan is in final stages of preparation. The market study and psychodemographic studies have been complete. Even today, we've gotten some additional renderings, some early additional renderings. All of these pieces are coming together, and we anticipate next month that we'll be in a position to come back to council and have a very robust discussion as we round out this year on what are the next substantive steps to facilitate that real, actual vertical movement and change at the site. What are the administrative steps? What's the approach in terms of lease or sale of property and all of that? So this process continues to move forward. We've had excellent participation and feedback from the public. And as we get closer to that final plan, I think we'll want to bring that vignette team, that steering committee, back together and run some of these concepts and these visions by them. But again, we do anticipate that we'll be coming back to council in the coming weeks with really some exciting developments and be able to demonstrate what the projected plan would be. Finally, just want to remind folks that this Saturday is the first annual Harvest on Main program. One of the programs that council authorized us to move forward with this year to try to improve the quality of life programming. As the graphic indicates, this is to be held this Saturday from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. That'll be on Main Street here downtown. We'll have the roadway closed off. This is intended to be obviously a fall-themed family event. We will have a craft show, and we're excited. I think there are more than 4 dozen high-quality craft and home goods types of vendors. Again, high-quality, handmade goods. So we're excited to be able to present that. Again, one of our local business owners has been coordinating that, the folks at Flower Bakery. We also have food vendors. We will have a straw maze. We have a pie eating contest. I think we may have a couple of those contestants. The mayor perhaps will be participating in that pie eating contest. All kinds of kids' activities, free giveaways, some unique things. We're really excited our local businesses really stepping up to partner with us. The folks at 68 Toys are coordinating I forget the exact terminology, but there'll be some sidewalk sales and Halloween events on the sidewalk down South Detroit Street. Robin and his team there at 68 Toys coordinating that. We've also got Glazed has stepped up, and they're providing at their cost some fall donuts, fall-themed donuts, pumpkin donuts and such, and they're partnering with some student groups from the school as a fundraiser. So again, just really appreciate our local businesses stepping up, helping to coordinate and provide unique opportunities with this event. Supposed to rain Friday night into Saturday, perhaps some rain Saturday morning to be fine. It's going to feel fall-like out on Saturday afternoon, and we think the weather will cooperate. So again, 2 to 7 this Saturday, bring your family out, participate, support your local community and local businesses, and have a good time with your kids. And that's all I have.
Great.
Can I add on to that the Toy Store is having a costume contest specific to that. Costume contest for the adults is a $200 cash prize. Under 12 costume contest is a $50 cash prize. So, there you go.
Can I ask a couple questions about the CIP?
Absolutely.
Sure. So, first off, I just want to tell you, I know you guys have been working hard on this, and it's a great document to help us understand specific things, not only in terms of how we're going to allocate next year, but across the years too. But as you noted in the first, that our real strategic plan is the X plan, and we're trying to tie back that, but we're dating ourselves out on that too. So I think, can you just give us a brief synopsis of where you're thinking about going with the X plan and the update to that then as well too?
Yeah, we haven't had too much discussion with this with council yet, and our intent was to come back probably next month and have more discussion as we start planning what our strategic priorities are for 2022. Our X plan, our comprehensive plan, was a document that, not just a document, it was a set of priorities based on community feedback that the council now some 7-8 years ago adopted. And it was an award-winning plan at the time. It was very action-oriented, implementation-oriented, and I'm really thrilled to say that we can go through that plan and identify specific goals and objectives that we can check off the list. So part of the reason that we need to update that plan is not just because it's becoming dated, but because we've accomplished a lot of what was identified or what were identified as priorities. I've asked the city planner who led that initiative previously to develop some recommendations on process and timeline, which he has done. I've had some initial conversation with him, but we need to get into a little more vetting and kind of come to an agreement on what we see, and then come back to council and make some recommendations. But I think probably beginning first quarter next year, as we typically would sit down with council and talk about strategic priorities for the year, we would begin that discussion, and then we would go through a regimented community outreach process, discussions with local stakeholders, schools, for example, county, for example, develop that timeline, key areas that we need to update. And again, all of that would tie back to our CIP because there are components within our comprehensive that really speak to things like transportation, neighborhood conditions, utilities, and so forth.
Right, great. Yeah, because and the implementation, I think, has been incredible in terms of what's happened. But once again, we're starting to get out of the limelight of the X plan. There are a lot of things in the CIP that really are not even referenced there because of the time frame that's on there. So I think it's important. And then just one other comment. So in the plan, we identify that we have 3 enterprise funds that, actually there's a number of enterprise funds, but the principal ones that we have a lot of cash in would be the 2 would be the water and the sewer operating funds. But we also in here specify that enterprise funds will be strictly utilized for their own respective business enterprises. And so I know we've had some public discussion about the fact of using these operating funds not just for water capital fund expenditures or sewer capital fund expenditures, but for street repair. So could you comment some on that in terms of the availability of those funds, either to have or not to utilize those for street repair?
Yeah. So both by law and by best practices, enterprise funds, which typically are some type of service-related enterprise locally, so think water, sanitary sewer, our storm sewer function, things like that, things that are funded through user fees. Are required, those funds are required to be used principally for the service that it supports. So let's take, for example, your water fees that you pay on your monthly utility bills. Proceeds from those fees go back into our water fund. They have to be used for some type of function activity, whether it's operating or capital related to water service. So the question might come up, can you use that? I think your question is, can you use that for roads?
Right.
To the extent that there is roadway improvement that is related to a water function, then yes, it's allowable. Now, I'll give you an example. This year, council authorized, and we had discussion on this, 2 particular projects in our annual street program that were related to water main breaks that caused damage to roadway. One was on Ray Street, one was in Colorado. Perfectly reasonable use of water funds to pay for the restoration of the roadway because we had to dig the road up to fix the water main. Conversely, there are times where you might anticipate a need. It's not reactionary like a water main break. For example, on Country Club. The water main under Country Club extends out eastward from the city and feeds Central State. That water main needs to be replaced and upsized. It's aged and insufficient for long-term capacity. We already know that to be true. Country Club happens to be a pretty crappy roadway, let's be honest. So conceptually, if you wanted to replace that water line, you could use then water monies to also replace the roadway if you're digging the road up to install a new water line. That would be an appropriate use of monies. Could you use water money to go into Sterling Green and replace a roadway or crack seal? No. I mean, unless you're doing something water related, you can't tap into those funds for that purpose. Having said that, I think you also have to be realistic. Our water and sewer funds are very healthy. We're very proud of the fact that council's made great policy decisions in these areas. We haven't had rate increases in a number of years, and we're not scheduling them for several more. But despite that fact, those funds combined, there's probably $3-4 million.
Combined, it's a little more than that, but I would say
capital funds as well.
Yeah, when you include operating and capital, there's about $4 million in each.
Yeah. So $4 million again, it's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, that if you could use it to repave your roads, it's not going to fix all your roads. We're in the order of a $40 million need. That was based on a number 2 years ago, because we've been neglecting our roads for 40 years. So again, I think we've been creative, working with council to come up with every means we can to address a street issue. As we've discussed with council, we have brought literally, into the credit of our engineering staff, literally millions and millions of dollars in state federal monies to help deal with our street issue in this community over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and we've made good progress. The problem is we were starting from such a low point that if we're not putting about $2 to $2.5 million per year, maybe even closer to $3 million now with inflation, we're probably losing ground in terms of the overall city condition. So we readily, rightly, transparently acknowledge this is a problem. It's got to be addressed. There are needs for additional funding to address this issue. The only way you're going to fix roads is to fix them. But there has to be a funding source to do that. And as the council well knows, we're balancing priorities such as public safety, park systems, economic development projects with roads, and trying to do the best you can in the way of service delivery and capital reinvestment to have a high quality of living in our community. And that's very difficult when you have a fixed income. You've got a limited budget stream coming in, and even as we've seen increases in income tax and property tax, when you start looking at the magnitude of what you have to have from an economic development standpoint to fund projects like this, Ryan and I were talking the other day, to get $1 million in new income tax money, you need 1,000 jobs at $50,000 on average apiece. That's a lot of numbers, and it's difficult to achieve that through just organic economic development. So we're seeing progress. I think we've got a stable to strong budget situation, but we're not able to address all of our needs immediately because we have a lot of deferred maintenance dating back really many decades.
All right.
And that's much more than you wanted, but...
No, that's okay. And I believe we also, one of the reasons we're in a good fiscal position too is we have fairly substantial reserve requirements for each of our operating funds, and in water and sewer, it's about $1 million each. Is that correct?
Yeah, the operating is $1 million each, and then there are some other criteria related to outstanding debt service and things like that, and the capital funds, where you obviously want to make sure that you're maintaining reserves that can offset that next year's debt service and things like that.
Right.
So it's $1 million in the operating. The capital has some other criteria, which is why those balances are what they are.
Right.
And then I would just also add to that conversation that it is not in the public's interest to use water and sewer funds for those purposes like streets, and that's why it's not legal to do so. The council can control rates. The council can't unilaterally increase tax revenue. And so when the council adjusts rates, it's in the public's interest to ensure that those rates are being used for the specific purpose which, council's collecting or the city's collecting those dollars for. And so there is, good reason for those restrictions. It's a safeguard for the public to ensure that their dollars are being used for their appropriate purposes.
One other thought, just as we're mentioning, some of these reserve requirements and so forth, we will be publishing our draft final budget as required by charter by the end of this month. As part of that publication that will go out to council and is made available to our public, we include every year financial management policies and goals. And these are the policies established by council to ensure transparency, financial security and stability. It covers things like use of funds, debt policy, and so forth. Again, available to our public. We encourage that dialogue as part of our budget review process. And this council, a number of years ago, in fact, I think back about the time I started city manager, we adopted this or readopted this format to be transparent, to be accountable, to make sure the public understands where the money is coming in, how much, how it can be spent, and we've got these safeguards in place to ensure that you're operating within the means and keeping the public finance component of our operation in good order. So again, we encourage that public inspection. We want that dialogue. We want folks to come out and ask those questions. We've got all of our expenditures online on the what is it, Ohio checkbook or whatever it's called, and all these documents are published. And again, we really encourage if you've got questions, call the finance director, call myself. We literally will take the time to sit down and talk with people, explain where we're at. If they have suggestions on things we might do, we'll take them.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of boards, commissions, and committees. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mayor Mays.
Thank you. We did not meet on the 27th as we had no agenda items.
We'll move on to the Property Management Committee, Councilman Scrivens.
Thank you, Mr. President. Property Management Committee met in full session on the when was it, last week, and we had recommended to go to the full council, the H&A project, and I think, yeah, we met on the 30th, and the H&A project, we discussed that fully, and finally we'll get a chance to pass that on to new owners, and then hopefully that'll be a revenue producer for us as opposed to cash out. That was the major topic. We discussed other properties, and we'll be bringing those forth as time permits. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilman Scrivens?
No, I think the other item, and it's been an ongoing one in that committee, is looking at the properties that are delinquent with the property taxes as well too. And it's going to be a challenge to move on a number of those. We've got about 400 that are underwater in the city right now. Now that's out of 12,000 total parcels. So in one respect, only having 400 is not, that substantial. However, each one of those is creating a blight within their neighborhoods because these are properties that are not being maintained. For the most part, they're not producing any income, any wealth for anyone. And up to this point, we've been blocked at the process to resolve this as a county level process. It's not a municipal process. So anyways, just want to thank Brent. I know you've had a number of discussions with the county folks, the prosecutor,
And it's encouraging seeing them respond affirmatively, and I think they have a desire to correct the deficiency in the backlog, and it's just going to take some organization with the county entities and the municipalities to kind of get that lined up, but again, it's encouraging based on what we're hearing so far.
Right, and that'll take some agreement for those that are owed the back taxes as well. Realize that from a property tax perspective, 63% goes to the schools, about 31% go to various county agencies, not directly to the county commissioners, but to various agencies. And the reality is the city only gets about 6.3% of the property taxes. So if a number of these properties are removed through the process, we're going to have to get some agreements set up with those other entities that they may not recover the back due, but if we could get these properties sold and into some productive hands, they will see income in the future.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Okay. As the chair of the Public Service and Utilities Committee, we met the 7th, and we talked about wastewater funding, landfill compliance issues, and broadband fiber build-out. Any questions? Okay. Councilman Branham?
Yeah, Planning and Zoning Commission met on 10/7, and we just discussed basically preliminary drawings with the Dillon Group and getting the Planning and Zoning Commission involved with them. There was no specific votes or anything like that, but Ms. Jordan came out from Dillon and presented a nice little presentation to us, and Brian just wanted to kind of bridge that gap between Planning and Zoning, Dillon Group, and then before we ever see as council the plan, Planning and Zoning Commission is either going to have their blessing on it or not, depending on how they vote, to bring it forward to council. So that's it for me.
Any questions? Okay, now moving on to council comments. We'll start far left. Rebecca.
All I have is looking forward to seeing everybody on Saturday with the Harvest Festival. Should be a lot of fun. That's it.
Okay, we'll go to Councilman Branham.
Nothing further to add here.
Okay, Councilman Scrivens.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just a few things. We definitely want to say thanks to Miss Mary Heller again for stepping up to the plate and accepting the civic responsibility to serve at the local level. Thank you again. Want to say condolences to the family of Miss Sandra Channels. I've been knowing her all my life. She just passed away this past week. And there was this fellow by the name of Sean Evich. He used to live here in Xenia, and I think he moved to Huber Heights. He was one of the unfortunate ones who didn't take the COVID vaccine and now has succumbed to the illness. So to that family, we say our deepest sympathy. I know a number of people in that family. I was glad to see the 2 county commissioners here tonight. I was wanting to see all 3 of them, but apparently Mr. Perales had other things to do. The jail is an important thing for the whole county. Not only will we be able to house the sheriff's department in a 21st century building, we'll have room to do other things, mental health, and then we can also rent the rooms, as I'll put it, to other entities. Other counties probably need to use our space, and that will undoubtedly become a moneymaker for the county. So I'd like to congratulate our own Mr. Ryan Duke, who made front page news today in the Xenia Gazette, above the fold, and just want to dispel some of the miscommunications that were being promulgated that the city is not in good financial condition. This city is in excellent condition given the fact that we just came through the COVID without going underwater. So for all of you people in Xenia who think the city is somehow, some way not solvent, that's incorrect. Don't believe any of that. That is incorrect information. And then finally, Mr. President, Xenia is playing again tomorrow evening away at West Carrollton. They still have a winning season, and we're going to wish them all the luck when Coach Maurice Harden, you have our backing. In terms of Country Club Drive, we can tell Mac Butteroff that at least we're discussing it. It might not get fixed for a year or 2, but at least it's on the table. I want to thank him for all that he does also for the Xenia Buccaneers. And with that, Mr. President, I yield back.
Thank you, Councilman Scrivens. Councilman Marshall.
Yeah. So, we had our neighborhood night out at Lexington Park, and one of the things we did at that was, as a city council, we set up a booth there and asked folks, what's your thoughts about the park, and what would you like to see out here? And we had a lot of good feedback from folks about both memories of the park and good things that had happened there, and things that they would like to see happen as well too. So we collected that set of information. I think we've also met with a group of individuals who are ready to step up and, from a community perspective, help start to organize activities at the park, and are very interested in coming alongside and refreshment of that park. I think one of the critical things is that before we move forward on any investment in the park, we need to ensure that there's a neighborhood association or a community group that's ready to organize regular ongoing activities at the park. That needs to be done by the community and the folks that are using the park. We don't have the resources to do that literally at any park right now, let alone at Lexington. I think we may have some ability to help with the near-term issues that some folks have, but on the flip side, I would just say to those of you who have been coming to us and talking to us about working at Lexington, we're going to be meeting back with some of these folks here in the next month and challenging them to step up to get this association, whatever we're going to call that, to step up. I will say that we've also had discussions with folks at Central State, Wilberforce, Athletes in Action, at Cedarville University, and they all have said that they are ready to come and help support activities at the park. Their biggest concern is they don't have the ability to go out and pulse the neighborhood and ensure that kids or groups of folks are going to be coming. But if a neighborhood association says, would say that, hey, this Saturday we're planning on having 50 kids here, AIA said we'll come and we'll run the day. We'll have all the activities ready to go for us and stuff. So once again, that's something that the neighborhood association would need to work with the various organizations, but thank goodness we've got a large number of folks that are ready to step forward with that. I think we as the city have a key role, not necessarily from a funding perspective, but from a coordination perspective to help coordinate this. And if we can make this successful at Lexington, to have a neighborhood associations stand up and take some of that ownership and stuff, I think that can be replicated across a number of our parks, our neighborhood parks in various other neighborhoods. There's a lot of passivity. I don't know where this is coming from, where a lot of folks are viewing that I'm going to sit back until the city does something or someone else does something. And I think if we can help give some hope to folks that, yeah, you can do this and step forward, and it's not going to require city funding from that perspective, but maybe we can help some of the organizational things. I think it'd be a wonderful thing. So anyways, I'm looking forward to meeting with these folks, and I think maybe Lexington can be one of our first focus areas to get some good, healthy, family-oriented activities happening on a regular basis and get folks back into the park. And then just a second thing, you may not have noticed, but there have been periods of time where we've had more than just a few homeless folks downtown over the last 12 months. Many Saturday mornings and Tuesday mornings, you've had 12 to 15 homeless folks downtown. But you may have noticed that they've all got bright yellow vests on. And these are work teams that Bridges has put together. We go out at 8 o'clock in the morning, pick up trash throughout the city, clean up the flower beds downtown. We're out right now doing curb painting of all the curbs downtown. As a matter of fact, we've made a commitment. We're going to paint all the curbs in the entire city, starting downtown and just bridging our way on out. These folks, part of the reason this program got started was to help folks not just be wandering around town when the shelter closed to open, but give them some purpose. Also give them some just basic work experience. Show up on time, work hard. They get reimbursed, and then there's not a dime of city money that's being spent on any of the equipment they're using or the paint we're putting on the street or the other things. This is all privately funded. But show up at 8, work hard for 4 hours. You get paid if you stay till 12. If you don't stay till 12, you don't get paid. And we've had over 36 different individuals who participate in the program over the summertime. We've had 12 that have found permanent housing coming out of this, and we have 6 that now have permanent jobs. And many of them are doing jobs, 3 of which have been hired by the county to go work over at the fairgrounds and doing similar kind of work. And so we've been able to give folks good recommendations just from basic, yes, this is someone who will show up. This is someone who's consistently been working and stuff. So I just wanted to say kudos to folks at Bridges that got this program set up, and we're looking for more opportunities of things to do. We've also talked about after we do some of the downtown cleanup and those kind of things, we have some of the stormwater retention ponds, many of which are privately owned right now, and there's a number of folks that just don't have the ability to clean up those retention areas behind their homes, and that's leading us a huge problem that if we get significant rainfall, those things are not going to drain properly. And so we're going to look in here later on in the fall to take those folks out, and just with shovel and wheelbarrows, we're going to clean those retention areas up to have some good work. But I just say, if you folks have some ideas of things that you would like us to do, we put down over 1,000 cubic feet of mulch down in the downtown area. We've cleaned up over in front of the county buildings there on that street between, what's the name of it? Green Street. On Green Street, yeah. Take a look at that. That's something the county was complaining about. We took care of that. We cleaned up over in front of the sheriff's office as well, too. So if you folks have some ideas for things, there's no charge to that. We'll take care of the equipment and the personnel and stuff, but we'd love just to come out and do some things that are going to improve the city. And I'd also say the folks that have been involved with this are excited about their work. They take pride in it. They get irritated as they've been walking down 35. And I'll tell you, it's not the homeless folks who are throwing the trash out, okay? Right. There's no homeless people walking down 35 from Walmart down to town throwing trash out, but it's people driving by. And they get irritated that we go down and clean that thing up, and a day later, there's a world of trash there. They've picked up over 1,000 bags of trash in the city this year so far. And so anyways, I think that's been a really positive thing for that group of folks, and we're looking to expand that program. Also, if there's folks out there who would just like to provide some private funds, once again, we're not looking for any city money for any of this stuff. It's not funded by the state, by the federal government, by the county. Anyways, these are just folks that said, hey, we want to put some private funds in that. And if you'd like to come alongside and do that, and if you'd like to come out and help us work, we're looking for additional people. I usually send out, they break up into 3 teams and go to different parts of the city. We could do more with that if we just had some people that are willing to step up and donate a little bit of time and donate some funds for that as well, too. So I just like to say thanks to folks at Bridget getting this program started, and encourage folks to come alongside that. Yep. That's all I got.
Okay. Mary?
Taking a drink because I've got a page worth. Sorry. It's been 3 weeks since we met last, so I do have quite a few things that happened over the last 3 weeks. Friday, September 24th, the Greene County Library had their update breakfast for the county, and I just wanted to thank Carl Colon and the work that he's doing in Greene County, his work with just the public, the schools, the community, even for our city. When we have asked him for help with something, he is very willing and able to help us out with a lot of different things. So thank you to Carl Colon. On that same day, that same morning, the kids at Shawnee Elementary had their walkathon, and I went out because I wanted to congratulate them. Those kids, not sponsors, the kids raised over $15,000 asking for help, and those donations all go towards field trips, teacher appreciation items. They get what they call bucks for good behavior, and so those go to some of the reward prizes. It was a really fun morning to be there, have an opportunity to talk to parents, just be available, answer questions, talk to some of the teachers, and show them that we support them, that we care about them. I specifically want to congratulate the PTO president, Michelle Maddox, out at Shawnee, and the work that she did for these kids. It was just a great job. On Sunday, the September 26th, Lighthouse Baptist had a first responders service that Councilman Urschel and I were able to go to, and a lot of our first responders were there, and they provided a steak lunch for them. And I wanted to mention that because First Lighthouse Baptist has really stepped up their support in our city. They provide, they cook a meal for the fire department and the police department, I believe on a monthly basis, at a minimum.
Right.
They take meals over. These are people who are volunteering just to cook for them, show them that we care about them, and then they're praying regularly for our first responders. So just wanted to congratulate them and the work that they're doing.
And they gave that whole service over to honoring the
Yeah.
first responders, which was just amazing.
It was beautiful.
Yep.
That same day, Jack Lyer, he is a new Eagle Scout. He received his Eagle Scout badge that day, and it was really a lot of fun to be able to congratulate him personally. It's so exciting to see people that are making that Eagle Scout level and knowing that they are contributing to our community, and it's good to be able to congratulate him in person. His project was cleaning the headstones out at the St. Bridget Cemetery there on 2nd Street, and the veterans' headstones, and honoring them. So congratulations to Jack. What a great young man here in our community. On Tuesday, September 28th, Neighborhood Night Out. Of course, we've already mentioned that, so I won't go over a lot of that, but I do want to thank the staff and especially our fire department and the demonstrations they did that night. It was really interactive. I know my kids had a great time. I'll give a shout out to Councilman Branham and the Popsicles, because it's a huge hit, and I was really thankful to have all of the council there that night. Everyone showed up and engaged, so it was a great evening. That same evening, actually, the Vintage Toy Store, Rob and Danielle, they had Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster, come in, and I want to mention that because we went to that to support them and to be a part of that, but because they are constantly bringing people in from out of town, and people are spending those dollars here in our city, and it's very exciting. They also had their toy show on October 3rd. Over 600 vendors. Every single building at the fairgrounds was used. Over 19 states represented of people coming to Xenia, staying in Xenia, spending their money in Xenia. So they absolutely need a shout out. We had a ton of fun being there, but just so thankful for the work that they are doing to advocate for Xenia and seeing people come here. Thursday, September 30th, Halo is a new dog training facility and boarding place. It's actually out in Xenia Township, but I wanted to mention it. They had a ribbon cutting, and I wanted to support them because one of the things that they're doing that's really interesting is they're working specifically with Family Promise of Greene County, which is formerly IHN. And I know in working with some of our homeless friends, we talk about this a lot. Something that I personally have observed when somebody's come to our church asking for help, they don't want to go to the shelter because of their pet. And I know that you and I may look at that and say, what? But this is their pet, that maybe one of the last few things that they feel a connection to from their home. So this particular Halo, the shelter for dogs, is accepting people's pets for that very reason. So they're working in conjunction with Family Promise to say, you know what, bring your pet out here. They're safe, and we're going to take care of them. We're not going to charge you. And then those folks then can go to Family Promise or the shelter and start getting the help that they need and moving forward. And it is so great to see those connections being made. That same evening, I wasn't able to go, but thank you, Councilman Scrivens, for going to the Lutheran Church. Pastor Schwolko was here tonight, 30-year anniversary of the Caring Place. Again, another amazing place that's taking care of our community right in downtown. Also on the 30th was the Wilberforce University hosted a mayor's reception with myself and with Dr. Pinkard. the president out at Wilberforce. And we did that to invite businesses to come in and meet people at Wilberforce to see what they're doing and start a conversation of how can we continue to develop workforce and see what's needed within the community. How can we find internships for Wilberforce students in the city of Xenia? How can we make sure those students are staying here and getting good jobs? So it was a really, really nice evening. I want to thank Wilberforce for the work they did and just, again, starting that conversation with a university and partnering with them to see things in Xenia continue to move forward with those students. On Friday morning, October 1st, Clark State hosted a breakfast to talk about what they are doing at their college, and it was, again, a very similar conversation. They gave us a little bit of update with their 2-year and 4-year programs, but they engaged us, Senator Hackett and some others, just what do you see the need is here in Xenia, and how can we credential that? Whether that's a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or simply some certifications. What is needed, what can we do, and how can we as a community work together to do that? So it was a great morning, great conversations. Also on October 2nd, SOS Ministries had an event out at the new Emerge site, which is the previous Greene County Career Center. Jeremiah and Carolyn Bird just doing incredible things in the recovery community and being a part of that Emerge site, a place that's helping, it's just now starting to take off and getting some roots going, but designed to help folks who are in recovery have safe housing and get job skills, get the practice that they need so that they can also come back and be contributing citizens here in the community. That evening, Jeremiah Tree had their gala, and just a great night. A lot of folks there. I know you guys were there, the deans were there, and a lot of great connections. One of the reasons I love doing events like that is because it is an opportunity to meet and partner with different people. I had a person call me earlier that week and said, hey, I'm looking for some office space in Xenia. Who do you know? And that night, able to make a connection to somebody who could lease them some office space. That wasn't why we were there, but it's so great when you have the different folks of Xenia coming out and we can connect those people together. And then last, I'll just mention on Sunday, October 3rd, Councilman Scrivens and Councilman Smith were there. Obviously, it's your church, Middle Run Baptist, celebrating their 199th anniversary as a church. What a great service that was, and congratulations to your church for being an incredible presence in our communities. Thank you for what you're doing in spreading the gospel and being in ministry to so many folks for 199 years. Congratulations. And that is all I have.
Okay. I don't really have anything else to add. Oh, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one other thing, two other things. I want to say congratulations to our own Doug Sparks. He's a detective in the Xenia Police Division. Yes. I met Doug a couple of years ago, and his son was a pitcher on the Xenia baseball team, and I think he's graduated. So I'll have to catch up with him again and do some catching up with them. And also the Legacy Academy, they're going to have a dedication of their chapel, rededication of their chapel. They've redone all of that, and they've invited our own Governor Mike DeWine to be the keynote speaker. So I plan to attend that, and I'm just wishing Legacy a bon voyage because they're moving forward. And that used to be the Ohio Sailors and Soldiers Orphans Home, and then they changed the name to the Ohio Veterans Children's Home. Well, now it's the Legacy Academy, and the campus is just beautiful. It's probably one of the best spots in Xenia. So when they sited that and built that, they really chose one of the better spots in Xenia. So with that, Mr. President, I'll yield back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Well, at this point, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Dean.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Urschel. Roll call, please.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
Vice President Dean?
Aye.
Motion carried.